Welcome, everyone, to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. Glennis, thank you so much for being on today. Would love if you can kind of jump in and kind of introduce yourself to the audience and share a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's quite a pleasure to join you this beautiful midday from New York. I'm currently the director of Biolabs at NYU Langone. We're an incubator, actually the largest biopharma incubator in New York City. We not just entertain biopharma early stage companies, but also pretty much any early stage company under the life science umbrella, including medtech and also sustainability plays. Currently, we have about 40 companies, believe it or not,
Wow.
hosted under the umbrella of our platform. Our value primarily is focused on execution and making sure that we help companies and the founders especially get to their milestones with significant efficiency, adding value to their investors and also de-risking significantly. So it's a very nice platform. Prior to this, I was in strategy consulting and come from the world of entrepreneurship, had my own company of all things
Oh,
in and in addition to that, come out of Columbia Tech Ventures and graduate programs. So my career has spanned many years. I'm not going to age myself. Many years in the commercialization of nascent innovation and also translating those innovation into significant impact.
I was going to say, it seems like innovation is your bread and butter, your wheelhouse. So that's incredible that you were able to really, impact it through all of these different lenses in your career.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's quite yeah, I feel very privileged to have such a diversity and non-conventional career progress. So I've gone quite broad rather than deep.
Mhm.
And I think I've benefited, I think our community has benefited from that very diverse experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a sucker for an unconventional career path, so I love that. I have so many questions for you about the work that you're doing at Biolabs, but before we kind of jump into that, also wanted to ask you, since I know you are, have this new position on HITLAB actually as a board member, would love if you can kind of share a little bit more about, what it means to be actively involved in a board and kind of what that looks like, especially from, the work that you do with HITLAB.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I've been advocating for the early stage ecosystem for years from the beginning of my career, seeing the challenges that nascent innovations, their inventors face when trying to enroll advocates, influencers, investors. Has been something that I've experienced throughout my career, and also as a founder. So I very much empathize with the challenges and hurdles that most of the inventors and entrepreneurs have before them, and realizing that having networks is not sufficient, having capital is not sufficient. Actually creating connectivity between all of the resources available, all of the regulatory and the investor networks that are available, bringing standards of knowledge to bear, bringing new and improved technology together, where they
Mhm.
can create collaborations, et cetera. All of that's needed for robust development of an idea to impact. And so my role as a mentor, my role as an advisor has always been trying to leverage these very different, very separate channels that are needed for success, bringing them together and helping individuals and companies actually leverage them, make connections with them, and utilize them for their success. And I think my relationship with HitLab is no different. Being on a board, there's tremendous responsibility, not only to help steer where the strategic goals will be and helping map the execution for that, but also building community, I think is really, really important aspect of this, and leveraging that connectivity that I mentioned earlier between these very, very different things.
Yeah, I think that what you're kind of really articulating is just this ecosystem that all kind of needs to feed into each other and all be kind of activated. So I think that is, an
Yeah.
incredible way to execute on that. Would love if you could share a little bit more about your role as, the director of Biolabs. I would imagine that, there's probably so many hats that you would wear kind of working, within an incubator. So I'd love if you could just shed us a little bit of light on that and share kind of what you enjoy about the role as well.
The thing I love about the role is there's never a dull moment.
I love that.
Absolutely, never a dull moment. There are, as you can imagine, many hats. There's an operational hat, business development, networking, as I mentioned, and every aspect of the life cycle from early stage, from just inception to actual exit. I have to bring knowledge and network to bear. So, for example, the average day involves meeting community members, meeting some of our founders, our members, making sure everybody's okay, making sure our team that does an amazing job executing and providing the services and platform for our community is in place and everyone's secure, but also dealing with day-to-day challenges. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes there's a company who needs advice. So I'm reviewing pitches, I'm reviewing decks. Sometimes there's someone who is interested in joining the community. They're not sure, so I've got to do business development and sales. Sometimes there are operational challenges. You know, if the autoclave error is there and our team or vendors can't figure it out, trying to come up with contingency plans to make sure that we have redundancies and everything is operational for the community. So yeah, there are quite a few hats. I think the most important aspect of this is just trying to bring everyone together, making sure this is a culture of collaboration. And that's the one I take most seriously and spend the most amount of time on.
Absolutely. And I mean, it seems like this is 100%, you're right in your alley. What led you to, make this transition in from all of the amazing work that you've done, entrepreneurship, et cetera, to, working for at an accelerator?
Yeah, so it's interesting that I wasn't looking for a role actually, and I was having a wonderful time. So prior to joining Biolabs, I was a innovation strategy consultant, and what that essentially meant was I was helping large multinationals actually accelerate innovation that they had in-house or acquire new innovation or companies to add to their portfolio. And that was going really well until the pandemic. And
Mm.
basically became an issue of lifestyle. So I had clients in Europe and we were doing market expansions in Asia. So while everyone was decorating their houses and catching up on Netflix, I just was not sleeping.
Oh my goodness.
Not tenable. And I got a outreach from the Biolabs headhunter several times actually, and I just would file it away as spam or junk. And then
Mhm.
finally one day, out of just sheer fatigue, decided to open it. And so my my being here was just frankly a lifestyle choice, but it turned out to be a wonderful opportunity to leverage my entire experience and actually get closer in terms of proximity to impact. So now I get to see, engage, and help promote lots of innovative ways of improving health, improving sustainability in the environment. So if everything works here, as I tell my team, to keep us motivated, if everything works, we'll all be living longer, more healthy, vibrant lifestyles in a more sustainable environment. And so I wake up every day and I get to bring my little tool chest of experience to that, and it's tremendous.
That is incredible. And yeah, everything you mentioned, sign me up 100%. I think that's a good goal for all of us. That
Yeah.
is amazing. And from what you're really sharing about your experience, it seems like you've kind of had your pulse on just emerging technology innovation for some time now. Was
Mhm.
there kind of anything that drew you to that particular, space within the life sciences, med tech, this new emerging innovative ideas and tools?
Since I was in grad school, I've been gravitating to technology. As a graduate student, dove into a very big question. Why do cells die and why do stem cells regenerate and why do they
Mm.
decide to be what they become? And those are not questions a grad student should be asking. Way too big. But because the questions were so big, I leaned into technology for the answer. And so found myself gravitating to really new and innovative tools. So I think one of my projects was taking ultrasound that was used for ocular examinations and using that for in vivo imaging of embryos in mice, and then designing viruses, lentivirus, to image cells as they were dividing in utero. Just the fact that I'm saying that is so crazy, but that I parlayed just this gravitation I had towards nascent and new technology, to be one of the early adopters of microarray, seeing all the data that could be generated and all the possibilities of invention, and the sheer mass that of things to do that created led me to start looking at high throughput screening technologies, et cetera. And so I was always trying to push the needle on discovering more, improving the efficiency of discovery, et cetera. And I think that was my first journey into nascent technology. And so as I joined Columbia, I started seeing not only was the amazing impact on discovery that was there with nascent technology, I started seeing in the tech ventures at Columbia how this could actually impact people's lives, not just the scientific endeavor. And that's where I think my love of innovation truly started. When you can look at a sequence and then envision how this is going to extend somebody's life, extend the relationship that an individual will have for many years, improve their quality of life, improve their time with their family, give themselves an opportunity to transfer knowledge. All these, I can go on and on about the narrative of what this means to both society and an individual, but that's when I really truly believed that all of this was important, and it became the major theme and arc of my life's work.
That is incredible, from wet lab to here. I mean, it's incredible to see how that's just, I can even just, tell from how you're describing it. It's so impactful, and I could tell you're very purpose driven with all of it. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. Would love if you could tell a little bit more about, how what you've uncovered during, your research, how that's kind of parlayed into some of your other roles, like consulting, like investing. Was it just kind of a specific philosophy that you have, held true, or were there other tools or skills that you've kind of picked up from this research hat that you've kind of been able to translate to others?
Yeah, so I think it would start with embracing new and seeking out new things to help accelerate and improve the current standard or state of being and doing. In that endeavor to find new, there was also this push to do it as quickly as possible. So I am someone who I'm not satisfied with the slow pace of things, and everyone here can tell you I'm very ambitious in timelines and in pretty much everything, frankly. But I think the beauty of starting my career in functional genomics and in what I would say high content, high throughput content, is that I quickly developed a knack for identifying patterns of success, patterns of failures, patterns of impact on a scientific discovery level, but also as this progressed more into patient populations, into commercial impact, I could see patterns and features. And I think having that experience early on in my career, coming from neuroscience, I could see how my brain started being wired for this. I think the success I've had in consulting definitely was driven by this ability to collect data, map data to goals, and to be able to quickly parse and see the patterns and features that can then be leveraged for impactful strategies.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like how it really is just, this beautiful pattern recognition that I would imagine has served you very, very well, especially navigating something that can be a little bit more nebulous just with innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that you get very comfortable with not knowing as a scientist, and that served me well. I love when I realize I don't know something, because that's an opportunity to say, okay, I need to go out and get this data. I need to find the answer or find some nugget of knowledge to help me advance this ignorance that I have. And so I think that too has served me very, very well, both in my current role and in as a consultant. And it's something I lean into every day. And I
That's
don't assume any knowledge is true. So there's constant pressure testing.
that, yeah, that's amazing. That's, I think, just such a great skill set or just lens to have, just in general. So it's great that you're really able to cultivate that just through all of these different roles. And speaking of, different roles, would love to learn a little bit more about your kind of entrepreneurial pursuits. I know that you co-founded, ran startups in India. Would love if you could just share a little bit about what that experience was like. Were there any insights that you gleaned when it came to not only running a startup, but, in another country, kind of on a global lens?
Okay, I would say that the number one thing you need is hubris, but like everything else in life, too much of a good thing is not great. Uh, so the the beauty of youth is that there is an opportunity to take risks that you can't or you tend not to do as you're older in life. And I look back on my early years, and there was great confidence in knowledge. And so I recently spoke about, testing and doubting what I know. I didn't have that back then.
Mm.
And so I was very, very confident that I myself and my co-founders had figured something out.
Mhm.
And at the time in 2007, the US market, it was clear it was going to be going through some challenging times. And we looked at India. And the reason we looked at India was that it was a gigantic white space, the second fastest growing economy in the world at the time. And the fact that they had not developed, I think only one drug had come out of there at that time.
Mhm.
So we were going to bring drug discovery to India for the Indian
Wow.
market. Yeah, and we checked all the boxes in terms of what you need. We had insights from customers. We had promises from future customers. We had funds, capital sufficient for a significant runway, and we landed there and executed. And as life would happen, there was a lot that we didn't know and we didn't anticipate.
Mhm.
We had brilliant advisors, brilliant minds on our project working with us. We had a wonderful team, but India is a very complex market. There were things that we had no idea. Number one, there was just the nature of doing business. It's a culture.
Mm.
Business in every region, I think, is a culture. As much as we rely on numbers and the standardization of math, fundamentally, there's an exchange and a negotiation that's driven by cultural context. And did not appreciate that when we first landed.
Mhm.
Suffice to say, it didn't work out very well at the beginning. So we actually had to pivot.
Mhm.
And so most founders, I think, can benefit from having a pivot plan in place prior to starting their endeavor. Um, I think I'm seeing it now in our own community as the preference for the market, that the preferences of investors change. You've got to be able to change if you don't have the capital. And so being able to say, okay, I was wrong, to eat a humble pie and say, okay, maybe not necessarily wrong, but what I'm offering is not a good fit right now to what's wanted and needed in the world.
Mhm.
And being able to find your way through, find the value in what you have, and to present something new is really, really important. And I think I learned that lesson fast and hard during that first endeavor as an entrepreneur, and thankfully, mercifully, we were very, very successful after our pivot, and we managed to exit. And we managed to, it didn't have as many zeros for a variety of reasons as we thought it should have, but we managed to exit and managed to go on with our lives rather than get mired in misery. And I think that's very important to know, number one, when or if there's a need to pivot, to know when and how to pivot. And number two, to know when to say, okay, this party's over, and
Yeah.
to walk away gracefully with as much value as you possibly can. And those are the things I think were absolutely invaluable. And I think every founder should have that that approach or sightlines to those, because, you know, if everything's going well, there's really nothing to do.
It's true. I love that.
There's nothing really to worry about, to be aware of, to be you know, focused on, to stay up at night, to manage. It's the headwinds that we all have to plan for and be aware of and guard ourselves against. And we also need to take advantage of the tailwinds as well. But I think that's a lot easier than managing.
100%. And it seems like this, experience was just so, just what a great learning opportunity. I think that in and of itself, makes it so successful, in addition to it being successful and, you being able to have that exit, which is incredible. And I love how you really kind of speak to, the need for adaptability, being able to have these plans in place to pivot. And you've really kind of learned that by doing. Kind of also wanted to ask you, since I know, in your current role, you are also, in a position where you're seeing a lot of really passionate founders that, have this idea of how they want to impact, a large scale. Are there any, particular things that you've seen, any challenges that kind of can occur in this pre-seed seed stage of a company, that maybe for those that are in the audience that are maybe in that position themselves, you can kind of impart some lessons learned from your experience just as a director?
Yeah, I think the current challenge that I wouldn't say universally felt, but the reverberations are tremendous, is just the lack of liquidity in the market, and the challenge of accessing capital for early stage companies. It's rife with opportunity, this current environment. But I think the major hurdle is for people to be able to see the forest from the trees. Everybody comes in, they have their milestones, they have their things that they have to execute towards, and they need to be laser focused on that. But I think what would be appropriate is to carve out a little bit of time and see how you can take advantage of the current situation. The number one focus should be survival, but there is opportunity. And every company, I truly believe this, can find something in their portfolio, in their tool chest, in their network, to create something positive in this very difficult moment that many early stage companies are experiencing.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's kind of like being able to think micro and macro as well.
Yeah, micro and macro, and just survive, extend your runway, do what you need, figure out what IP you have that can be leveraged for additional value. Just looking at yourself, looking at the ecosystem in a 360 view, and just seeing how you can lend and how you can be impacted as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a lot of great, just, words of wisdom. We actually have some questions from the audience I want to make sure that we get to. The first is, let's see, do you see the notion of patients taking control and agency over their health data as an enabler of a patient-centric future?
Yes, I do. I absolutely see it's an enablement of patient-centric future, but it has to happen at a scale that we're not seeing right now. We need, I think, communities or patient advocacy communities is the way that this can happen a bit more. There are quite a few companies that are trying to help patients monetize their data. And so once a patient can monetize their data, and we can see them actually coming together and helping narrate how that data should be used, I think we can see more patient-centric focus on the research and development of innovation. But it really, really depends on scale.
Right. Yeah, I think that's kind of the golden ticket, I think, for a lot of innovation, is just the scalability.
Yeah.
We have another question that reads, the focus for the past 10 years has been on preventing readmissions. Now, in the next 10 years, the focus will be on preventing admissions. Do you agree with that? If yes, what would be the most interesting innovation that can support such change? And do you believe that regulations will support that?
Okay. So in terms of readmissions, I'm assuming this is just making sure that whatever therapies are applied are sustainable and actually make a curative impact rather than a slightly therapeutic impact. So I think it's the interesting aspect of this is there has to be a business model in which the payers, the doctors, the patients, the ecosystem actually has great incentive structures for lasting cures. We see that the system as it is right now does not necessarily have a regulatory framework or a monetary framework in which, for example, gene therapy. So gene therapy, it's curative. Once you've cured sickle cell, that's it. So how do we create financial systems to help the companies who are creating those therapies? How do we create regulatory systems so that what we're in a capitalist society, we are, and innovations driven by that ambition of a monetary or capital goal. And so I think there needs to be a systematic evaluation of the payers, the regulators, and the clinical influencers and stakeholders, figuring out how to make this work. And so there is opportunity there, and I think they will figure it out. I think just the pipeline of innovation that's coming that is curative, it has to be figured out, and I think it will. And I think that will shift the needle more from, readmission to just preventing admissions.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for all of these. Those were the questions that we have, but also kind of wanted to ask. I know we're a minute out, which is crazy. I think time is flying. For you, just being at the forefront of all of this innovation, is there something that you are kind of seeing, on the forefront that you're particularly excited about? Whether it's AI, whether it's, a specific therapy that you're seeing, anything at all?
Yeah, I think AI, everyone says this is something that we see a lot of. There's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of energy around AI. And someone who comes from the world of functional genomics, AI has always been 22 years ago there was AI. But I think the thing that's shifting, and I apologize for the wonderful New York soundtrack in the background. The thing that's really, I think, important about this moment is the power of generative AI, the power to capture the hearts and minds of regulators and consumers and patients that we haven't seen before. People can see this in their everyday lives. They're seeing it impacted. And I think this brings about attention and resources that we've never seen before in the discovery stage of innovation. So yes, there's going to be a lot of AI tools. People are going to be talking about AI, but it's been fundamental to research and discovery and development for the past 22 years. It's not new, but what is going to be the speed, the attention, and the resources that it gets. And I think that's going to have tremendous impact. I'm so excited for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been around, but I think now it's kind of on a launch pad. So it'll be really exciting to see kind of what's going to be happening in the next, couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It was such an enlightening conversation. I really appreciate just, all of the words of wisdom that you've shared.
Well, same here. Thank you so much for having me, and this was fun. And looking forward to joining for these in the future.